where we left off on the last video tutorial here is that we have, if we right click on faces, we have an edge loop for the outer eye area right there. And so now it's time to make an edge loop for the mouth, and we're going to kind of build out the base of this character here in this lesson. So getting situated here, I'm going to open up the modeling toolkit on the right, and then I'm going to go up to mesh tools, break off the mesh tools window as I always do when I'm modeling, and bring that down to the bottom and put that in the bottom of my outliner right there. And let's see here. Let's get started. So I'm going to go shading, X-ray right here. And so what I need to do is I need to make a couple edge loops, and I need to start to kind of build out this mouth. So to kind of start things off, I'm going to go to the Insert Edge Loop tool. And if you recall, if you press the options box, this is really important that Insert with Edge Flow is turned on right there. That's what makes this different from the multi-cut tool. So I'm going to click right there, and you'll see it'll round things off right there for me, which is nice. Keep this character around here. And let us do another one. You know what? I think that'll be okay right there. So I thought about adding another edge loop just then, but I decided against it here. And what we're going to do in a moment is we're going to right click on faces, and we're going to extrude those and kind of make that outer mouth area right there. And so I just need an area where this character doesn't have a nose, but like an area where the nose would hypothetically go in between the eyes. Up here you can see the eye loops right there, and then where the mouth loop is going to go. So by creating that edge loop, we successfully did that. And just kind of looking at this model real quick, it's really important just to kind of keep your view active, and maybe press 3 and with it in objects mode, oops, to kind of get a sense of what this is doing. So we got a little bit of a bevel happening. That's okay. So next up, I am going to, I kind of worked on one side here, and if you recall, there's kind of two ways to work when modeling a symmetrical character like this. There's the one that I've been doing in the last tutorial, which is to model one side of the character and then mirror it over. And the other way is to, in the modeling toolkit, to turn symmetry on right here. And so for the mouth, since the mouth kind of is on both sides, it's a lot easier to create the mouth using symmetry mode here. So I'm going to press 1, go back to normal viewing mode, and here I'm just looking at my model real quick before I mirror it. I think it looks okay. And let's see here, I'm going to mirror it over. Just have to think about it for a sec. The window is huge right there. Okay, there we go. Oops. And I'll press Q. Right click, go to Vertex Mode. I always right click and go to Vertex Mode after mirroring something, because a lot of times it'll just mess up and create like a weird double vertex. And so the best way to check if you're getting like a weird double vertex here is to press 3 while in Vertex Mode. And if sometimes if this was like a double vertex, and you press 3, like a purple dot will show up, like jump to right there. And you only really need to worry about the center. The center is the only area where it'll mess up. And this is clean right here. Something else to look for is these should all be, press 1 again, these should all be 4-sided faces right here. So if you see anything that looks even remotely like a triangle, double check that right there. And I have a full video lesson on repairing meshes that you can find on this YouTube channel. So if you look that up, if you find any issues there. But this looks okay. So I'm going to right click, go to Vertex Mode, and I'm going to turn symmetry on. So for object X, I'm going to turn it on right there. And I'm going to even out some of this geometry here. And when I select vertices, I like to just check the back, or you can press 4 to go to Wireframe Mode and just make sure that I didn't select any of these vertices back there by mistake or something like that. So that looks good. I'll press 5 to get back. And I'll press W, which is the shortcut for this move tool right here, and then just drag these down because I want this to be like a little more level here. Just reshaping this tiny bit. So I like to check it from the front, then check from the sides, just make sure this is kind of looking generally okay. It's just really important to kind of check it from as many angles as you can here. So this is kind of the mouth. What we're gonna do here is we're gonna hold Shift, select 1, 2, 3. So it'll 6 faces will get selected total there. And so you would think maybe you could just go ahead and make this the mouth, but I would recommend, or I'd highly recommend extruding this first and then creating the outer lip from that extrusion right there. So I'm kind of intentionally outside of the mouth here. And I can see, oops, before doing that keep in mind that my character, I'm mainly trusting the right side here. So the left side is more, just broad reference, but like if I were to trace something, I'm kind of trusting the right side of my model here. So you can see with my faces, 1, 2, 3, that it goes outside of the mouth in all areas, so that's good. I can see some faces in the back got selected by mistake right there. So if you hold down Control on your keyboard and then drag and select back there, it'll deselect things. Super helpful shortcut right there. So I'm not really bothered that much that the mouth overlaps on the left side because the left side is, my drawing's asymmetrical here. So I'm gonna extrude here with these faces, and then when you extrude with symmetry on, you get the simpler control, which can actually be helpful in some instances like that. The blue arrow, if I were to pull it out, would just like, pull all these faces out kind of geometrically almost. So I don't want that. But what I do want to do is grab this light blue box and then just drag it from right to left. And you can see there that the mouth kind of starts to form right there. And so I'll press Q. And so why did I do that, right? Is if you look up at the eyes, if I hold down Shift and double click right here, you see how we get that edge loop that goes around the eyes nicely right there. So I want the same thing for the mouth. So Shift, double click, there we go. We have an outside area for the mouth right there. And so that's the sign that you've got an edge loop going and that your topology is gonna kind of work here. And it's really good. It's really important on a character to have that for the eyes and the mouth. So I'll press Q. And so I need to shape this thing up a little bit. So what I like to do is I'm gonna use my orthographic reference drawing and I'm gonna shape it from the front view, just trusting my front orthographic view, and then I'll flip this to the side view by going to Panels, Orthographic Side right here, and flip it to the side view. So to kind of make sure I have it in 3 dimensions. That's a very common mistake I see, is that people will model something and they'll only trace the front or the side and kind of neglect the other angle. And sculptures are 3-dimensional, so it you kind of end up with something pretty messed up when that happens. So what I'm doing is I'm pressing Q to get out of the move tool and then pressing W to kind of go back to the move tool just to kind of get those controls out of my way. And I'm keeping my perspective view open so I can see, just make sure that I'm not selecting faces on the back there. So I'm getting towards the edge of the mouth. It's just moving from the center to the right. And as I get to the edge of the mouth, I'm actually going to move back to the center again at the bottom because the sides get a little tricky in there. So I just want to make sure the center of the mouth is rock solid before doing that. So back to the center again. I'm going to press 4 over here. Ooh. Hopefully I haven't been doing that too much right there. Okay. So putting your perspective view in wireframe mode is actually pretty effective here, just to kind of make sure things are going okay. So again, don't worry about or I'm not worrying about the left side right there. I'm only worrying about the right side right now. And I'm going to press 5 so I can see this again. So you can see I have some work to do on that outer edge. And I'm going to continue, but I am going to continue working on the front view here. this is getting a little trickier now. So I'm gonna have some cleanup to do in a moment, for sure. The wireframe mode is really helpful for making sure that you don't have vertices or faces selected on the wrong side. But I personally do have a bit of a hard time visualizing things spatially with the wireframe on right there. Everything just flattens out for me and I have a hard time discerning space that way. But some people do really well with the wireframe mode, but I mainly just use it to check to make sure I'm not selecting a vertex or a face on the back side there. Okay, so this thing's, if I just kind of charter what I have there, this is at least from the front view, is tracing the right side of my drawing pretty well here. Maybe not perfectly, but there we go. Okay, so now I need to check it from the side view. So panels, orthographic, side view. This is where it becomes very advantageous to have done a side view drawing, which I don't have for this, and I'm kind of regretting it. So I'm just going to push this forward. So remember here that in the front view, I've been doing the vertical and then the x-axis, and that's pretty well positioned at this point. And so all I really need to worry about is the z-axis, or all I should worry about is the z-axis from the side view. So just the yellow arrow in my case is all I really need to worry about here. And I probably will end up making some adjustments kind of back and forth just to kind of get it going, but just generally speaking, that I guess it's the yellow-blue arrow right there. It's the main one that concerns me. But it's important to kind of round this character out. And remember that you can go to Objects Mode and then tap 3 to get a preview of what this thing's going to look like when we smooth it. So I can see the chin is kind of doing something funky in there, but we do have some nice roundedness up there. Press 1 again. So you can see this one's kind of jutting out a little bit. So I might bring that in and bring it up a little. And it's really helpful to just get some practice with this. You know, you might not even get it the first time, and that's all right. You know, a lot of the times I'll just, you know, do a speed run, let myself mess up, and then the next time around when I do it, I'll know some of the pitfalls and end up with a much better model than if I just kind of flying blind here. Okay. So now I'm going to switch it back to the front view again. Panels, orthographic front. And I'm just going to double check to see how much I changed my lines there. And the integrity of the line is kind of okay. It's in a slightly different place, but that's not too bad. I might split the difference. You see how it's going above it on the left side, but below it on the right side. So I'm kind of okay splitting the difference there. Very different on the left side in that case. Okay. But you can see that I'm checking the orthographic front, orthographic side, and then I'm really just making sure to navigate around my character and just make sure this kind of looks all looks okay from every angle here. And so we have some nice edge flow. If I right click and do face, I shift and double click there. So that's nice. And so why am I like always talking about topology and edge flow right here? And there's a few reasons for that, and one is if you're ever going to make this an animatable character, absolutely crucial that you do that. Second off, if you can get a really good looking model this way with a whole lot less polygons and a lot less headache in the future steps that we're going to go through. So it just kind of, it's kind of looking ahead and making your life easy here. Also take note that I'm working with a really low subdivision level right here. So right now I have 158 faces on this character, and I'm not in a much of a hurry to add that many more. So that's just something else to kind of keep in mind here. So kind of moving forward here, I'm going to do a little cleanup on this model, just a little bit. And the slide edge tool can be really helpful. So you can see right here that these faces are pretty tight in there, but then they get really big down here. So I might want to even that out some. And the slide edge tool can be really helpful for shifting your topology around without like ruining your model. So I'll just double click on the slide edge tool, and I always have to double click to get it to go. And then it says drag with middle mouse button. The message disappeared right there. But then, so I'm in it, I need to go to edge mode to do the slide edge tool. So I'm going to select the edges that I want to slide, and right here, I'll just middle mouse click and then drag. I'm using a Wacom right now, so it's a little jittery there, but I might just select the rest of these going to the center, and again, it's a middle mouse click, and then you just slide it in, and it keeps it round. But you see how I'm just trying to keep the topology like somewhat even here. And it's looking a bit better. Might be a little too inexact for that lip area. It does like snap a little bit, which I wish it didn't do, but it's a pretty good tool overall. Okay, so right click, objects mode, press 3. We're getting a little bit of a preview on this thing. And one thing to take note of is I am trying to get this model as close as humanly possible to being like the finished product here, but I plan on taking mine into Mudbox in the next step, and I'm much better in ZBrush and Mudbox, the 3D kind of sculpting programs here. And so kind of the minor cleanup I can kind of handle in there. Let's see here. So pressing 1, going back to normal mode, and right here, we're going to start working on these eyes here. So I'll right click, go to face mode, and I'll select those 4 faces. Take note that I'm still in symmetry mode. I'm kind of debating this a little bit. This is a little bit easier on the mirror side of things. I'm just kind of thinking about that. Let's go ahead and do the mouth, because I know the mouth we'll want to do in symmetry mode. Try to make this as efficient as possible here. So I'm going to start with the mouth, and I'll just press extrude, and we get the simple extrude tool because we're in symmetry right now. And so that's why I was debating between the eyes, because we're kind of limited to this more simple extrude method at that point. So I'm just doing one extrude to get, and we're getting the thickness of the lip, right? The width of that lip right there is kind of what we're going for here. So I'm just pushing that in. And then when you got it, that might be a little too thick, maybe like that. Hard to say. I'll press Q. Always press Q after extruding to just make sure that you get out of the extrude tool. And that looks okay to me. And so with those faces remaining selected right there, I'll just press extrude again. And here I'm going to push it in some. And we're going to start filling in that mouth a little bit. And so my controls are pretty limited in mirror mode, which I don't love. But we're just trying to build out the inner mouth here. So I might press Q and switch to the scale tool. I'm going to see if I can get this. Yeah, shoot. You know what? I think symmetry worked okay for this far, but I work better with the split model in this step. So I'm gonna go turn off symmetry, and ooh, do I have faces selected? Shoot, I have faces selected in the back. That's a bit of a disaster there. So I'm gonna have to undo what I just did there. Do control, drag. Let's just redo this extrusion. Yeah, always keep an eye out. God, this thing really loves to select faces in the back there. You see how much that's happening to me, so just, you know, be aware. You know, it's, I model all the time and it still gets me sometimes. So I'm just redoing the width of the lip extrusion right there with symmetry on. And now I'm gonna press Q and I'm gonna turn off symmetry and start modeling the other way for a bit. Right click, select all these faces right here on the left side, delete them out. So now we're working with a much simpler model here. And let's continue with the mouth. So right click face, 1, 2, 3, select those faces, and did it again. And now we're gonna kind of fill in the inner mouth here. So really, really, really important that you do this correctly though, if you're following along with me here, which is when you extrude, since we're working on one half of the model, if I just pull the blue arrow in, that's going to be a mistake. Do you see how it kind of flips in on the left side of the character if I pull that in right there? So do not just go straight for an arrow. You really need to press this power button right here and make sure that this is in world mode. So now when I do the blue arrow, it's pulling straight back and we're keeping this thing symmetrical here. So really important that you press that power button right there. And I'm only scaling vertically. I'm not scaling horizontally, because if I scale horizontally, you see how it kind of goes back into the left side again. So working on the mouth is a little bit tricky, as you can probably see here, but not too bad. I'm just kind of building out the inner mouth. I'm going to work on the outer mouth soon here. So one thing I might do is press R for scale, so getting out of extrude. And with this blue box right here, I'm just going to scale it forward and just kind of get this thing flat right there so that it's just kind of clean. And I don't have faces going in every which direction inside of the mouth there. Scale it vertically a little bit. Okay, so I still have those faces in there selected. And don't worry about this face right here. We're going to worry about that in a second. Oops. So extrude again, make sure you press this power button right here to make sure it's in world mode rather than local mode. Blue arrow to push it back a little bit, and we're just doing the back of the mouth here. And this is going to be kind of way back in the shadow, so that is probably okay. Press Q. And now you see we have these two faces right there, those stray faces. Good golly, okay. Those two faces right there. And I'm just going to delete those out. So just select them, press delete on your keyboard, they're gone. So when we mirror the character over, we'll kind of have an inner mouth on both sides now. And one thing I might do is I'm going to go to edge mode. 1, 2, just going to push these forward a little bit. I want just a little bit more of a bevel right there for the roof of the mouth. And I'm also going to select these two edges and push them out to the side a little bit. I do not want any overlapping faces here, so that's super important. You notice how you always see with mine that there's a gap. And I try really hard not to have overlapping faces here. ZBrush, if you use ZBrush, it hates it. It's it can be a problem in that program. Mudbox does a little better with it, but still not great, you know. So just try to avoid it. Right click vertex, just pushing this one back a little bit. I'm just going by eye here, you know, so what I'm doing right here is probably not exactly what you need to be doing with your model. It just depends. But notice that these vertices right here, these inner vertices, no matter what I'm doing, I'm keeping them along. If you look in this front view, I'm keeping them right in the center right there. They're not straying left or right, right? So, and if they do stray left or right at any point, let's say I pushed it in like that, you just have to select them, whichever vertices that you need to be in the center that aren't in the center right now. And right here where it says XYZ, and there's a tab, so if you don't see it, click this tab. under, my character is facing front ways, so, oops. In my case, it'll be X, I'll type 0 and then return and keep your eyes right there. Punches in the center, so this thing's ready to mirror again, you know. So very easy to correct if they do get off axis right there. So the inner mouth is kind of built out right there, and again we're keeping this low poly and keeping it simple. So here I'm going to right click and do face, and I'm going to go face mode, and I'm going to do a similar, or basically the same thing for the eye right here. And the eyes, I was contemplating it. It is very difficult to do in the symmetry mode, I find. So this mirror mode is much better for the eyes here. So extrude. And here, I don't have to worry so much about local versus world mode, I don't believe. So I'll just keep it in local and press it in a little bit. So this first one's the thickness of the eyelids. So extrude 1, I'm just doing the blue arrow, pushing it back, getting the thickness of the eyelids. So, you know, some thickness, but don't go crazy with it. Press Q. And we're going to extrude again, and we're going to basically do the exact same thing as we did for the mouth, and we're just building out the eye socket. And so we're going to make a separate object for the eye, which will go into this eye socket. So with those faces remaining selected, I'll press extrude again, and I'll blue arrow in. And now I might just go ahead and get out of extrude by pressing R for the scale tool, and I'll just scale it up uniformly, I should say, with this kind of teal center box right there. And I'm running in danger of having some overlapping faces here. So I might just adjust these on the roof of the mouth to go down a little bit. And keeping things low poly, so the nice thing about it is if you get sidetracked on the roof of the mouth and you want to select these again, since my character is so low poly right now, 1, 2, 3, 4, really easy selection, if or it should be easy if Maya wasn't actively trying to make my life difficult. I'll press 4 to go to wireframe mode just to make sure that I don't have any stray faces selected, 5 to go back. And so I'm just going to go back to adjusting this again. I want enough room for the eye to be able to kind of fit in there. It's okay if the eye overlaps with this some though. Press R and see what happens. Yeah, I don't like that. Let's see. Okay, so I was just shaping that a little bit, and then I'm gonna extrude it one more time. Blue arrow, and then press R for the scale tool, and then I'm gonna scale it back in a little bit. So we're just getting the inner eye socket right here. And we have that filled in. So Q, get out of it. I'll go into object mode, press 3. And so we can see what this is going to look like when it's smooth. And so there's more definition I want to add in the lips and things like that, but you can see, you know, this is starting to kind of hopefully become clear what I'm doing here. And so with this, I might just go ahead and press 1 again and try mirroring this, because I think I'm good to, I want to switch back to going to symmetry mode again. I just needed to get out of symmetry mode to create the eye socket in the mouth right there. So this button right here is mirror, and it looks like it worked. I'll press Q, and to double check my work, I'll right click and go to vertex mode. Right, I'm looking for double vertices here, and the best way to root them out is if you press 3, and I'm surprisingly not seeing any right now. I usually see some. Mine's usually a little more troublesome in this area than this. But if you, I was kind of actually hoping there would be one so I could show you. But if there was a double vertex right here, if I press 3, there would now be a second one showing up right there. So this model looks clean to me. So, and notice how I looked around the whole model, and I'm keeping my eyes towards the center because that's usually where the mess ups happen right there. And it doesn't, if there are some, I don't see them right now. And so we have the base form kind of made here. I'm just going to save this real quick. File, save scene as. You can see from class I had worked ahead there. So I'm just kind of reviewing what we went over in class, and you can see I save a lot while I work. So next up, I think before getting too much further on this, I think it'd be wise to add the eyes here. So the eyes, I start with just a polyprimitive sphere. So you can just click on that right there. I'll start by pressing R, scaling it up. And so super important with eyes is, you remember what I've been ranting about with topology and face loops, right? So faces for the eyes, shift double click, goes around the eye right there. Same thing for the eyes. When we make a sphere, really convenient that the eyes come out like this, and so the iris right there. And with an iris, whether it's a cartoon character or even a realistic character, a lot of the times you're going to want this to be a little rounded out, like a little tiny little dome up there, and it allows it kind of depends what kind of eye you're making and stuff like that, but it can be really good. And even if you don't do that, when you're texturing your eye, once we UV it and texture it, so much easier to paint it and texture it when you treat this as your iris right here. So rant aside here, all I've done is created a sphere, scaled it up so far. What I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to go to the attribute editor to the right side of the screen. So attribute editor for me is right there. And then up here it's going to be the third horizontal tab. And it should be polysphere 1, I believe, right there. And I'm just going to increase the subdivisions here. So subdivision axis by default is 2020. And that's not great. I mean, it's okay, but it's once you smooth it, it'll be okay. But you can see there's some hard edges happening there, and we want this to be like round. So I'm just going to drag this up to 50 both times. And we could get away with 40 too, I think. 40 might be all right. Just kind of depends, you know. So keep in mind though, what I'm doing here with the attribute editor is only available to me when I first create the object right there. If I do any extrusions, any real work on this eye, and I try to go back in here and do this, the model would start deforming and going crazy on you. So be sure to do this as a first step. You can't go back to it. So we're going to try to line this up within that eye socket right there. So I'm going to use the orthographic view to help me out, and I'm going to go to a 4 view for this. Oh yeah, but before I do that, I need to rotate this so that the iris is facing the correct way. So I'll press E on my keyboard, and if you hold down J, super helpful shortcut when you're rotating models in Maya. If I hold down J and rotate it, it snaps it by 15-degree increments right there. So you can get to 90 degrees very easily. So I'll press spacebar now to go back to the orthographic view, and I'm going to zoom out, make sure everything is in X-ray mode. So I'll go to shading X-ray for each view, and then might turn on preview wireframe unshaded on each, which is this button right here. And it looks like that is enabled all around. And so I'm just going to place this eye in position. So I'm going to go to the right eye, and I'm going to do the front view first, and then I'll get the others. And this takes a bit of back and forth in each direction. It's not going to just, it probably won't just kind of fit right in for you there. So I've got the front view, and you can see in my drawing the iris is over there. So I might just go ahead and press E on my keyboard and just rotate a little bit to get this in position. Or, sorry, I'm going to go ahead and just try to guesstimate a little bit first, and then I'll do that. So just get it close. And then E on my keyboard, and I'm going to rotate it so that my iris ends up in the correct spot right there. You can kind of see it. It's probably a little hard to see, but you can see my iris is kind of showing up in the correct spot now. And to place it the other way, I might switch to my side view. And you see how when I use my move tool, even though I rotated it, it's still moving in the world mode right there. That should be the case for you, but if it's not, if that blue arrow is bringing it like diagonally for you right now, you just need to, this is the move tool right here. So I just double click on it, and then you see at this top tab right here, it's in world mode, which is what I want. But it might have gotten switched to object mode. So if I switch it to object mode, you see how now it's like dragging it diagonally. you might not want that. So just know that with the move tool, the rotate tool, the scale tool, this is something you can get, or you can change for all of them, and you just get it by double clicking on it, and then this menu comes up, and you can change it right here. So you can change things from object to world. So I have things in world mode right now. I think it just makes things a little easier when I place things like this. And my character has kind of bulbous eyes, so it is okay if they stick out, but I don't want it to overlap too much with my model. And something that's going to help me out a lot on this is I'm going to press 3 to preview smooth my model. This is going to help me place the eyes a lot better. And you can still use perspective mode. It's just, do you see how I was using those orthographic views at first, and it just made it a lot less painful to kind of get this thing just initially into position for me here. Oops. Okay, just continuing to place them. And, you know, like, I don't settle for things very quickly. You know, I think it does pay off. You don't want to like obsess too much over the details, but it's really nice just to kind of get it right the first time instead of placing the eye incorrectly and then having it show up as a problem down the road here. And so my character's eye, if you look at the drawing, is not spherical, right? So it's a little oblong, so that's why I'm having to kind of do some things here just to kind of get it correct. Switch back to the front view. Interesting. Okay, so the perspective view is the one you trust in the end, but again, the orthographic view is just super helpful for getting that lined up there. So I chose 50 subdivisions right there, and that looks good to me. When I use Mudbox, I'll kind of clean up that eye right there a little bit. I could also clean it up now. Let's see. So if I click and let's do edge mode, select that edge for instance, I could just kind of just tweak this minorly just to get things going. And it's okay that I'm in 3 mode for this. Where 3 mode can be a problem is when you're adding new insert edge loops or extruding things. That's where you get in trouble, keeping it in 3 mode. But it is okay to kind of just move some vertices, move some edges around while in the 3 mode previewing what it's going to look like when it's smoothed. Okay, so we have that in position. And I'm not going to do it now, but I am going to go ahead and save. You can save also by pressing that little file right there, file icon. Eventually I can duplicate that eye, and you can just do that. You can one easy way to do it, I think, is just to mirror it right there. Bam, you got it. And then it just, since we've been working symmetrically, it comes right up for me right there. You know what? I'll just leave that. I kind of like having it fully formed right there. So, okay. So continuing, there's a few more things we need to do right now. You know, I have some teeth to create, a tongue to create, some legs, some shoes. Oof, got a lot of work to do. But one thing I would like to say is you see here how this lip is very thin right there when I preview smooth. So if you want to thicken up that lip right there, let's turn symmetry back on. Object X. Sorry, I just saw a vertex. I want to move around a little bit here. Okay. Is adding insert edge loop tools, insert edge loops close to an edge, or even beveling an edge. So if I have like an edge loop like right there going around the mouth, it is going to make that edge when I preview as oops. When I press 3 to preview it, you can already see that it's helping define that mouth a little bit more. So I'm just gonna, you see how I added an edge loop really close to there? I'm gonna edit undo. And I just wanted to show you that. And I'm going to do that for the inside of the mouth and then outside of the mouth. So again, the insert edge loop tool, I might not do it quite as close this time. I was just trying to help make a point by making it that close. Bam, inside. You know, I do kind of want that pretty close in there. One right there. And right click, oh shoot, right click, go to Objects Mode, and then on a preview smooth, it's just, you can see that lip starting to kind of come about. So the more edge loops you add in an area, the more defined that place will be. And so that's kind of a nice little addition right there. So I'll keep that. So all I did right there is I added, I used this tool right here, insert edge loop tool, and then right click edge. I added this edge loop right there on the outside of the lip, and then this edge loop right here, right on the inside of the lip. And they kind of came in okay. I don't know if I need to make too many adjustments to it here. So I'm gonna add a few more edge loops in this thing. Let's see here. I'm gonna save again, and then let's just preview what happens when I do an edge loop there. Ooh, it kind of brings it away from the eye. Okay. So my goal here is, again, I'm gonna try to keep this thing super low poly, and then when I smooth it, it's gonna double the geometry for me here, and then it'll kind of look, again, it'll look like that if I can ever get this thing to get out of that cage mode. I'm forgetting how to do that. Great. Okay. So I might do the same thing for going out here around the eye. So I'm just going to do insert edge loop tool again. I'm going to add one right around the eye right there. And I might just bring out a teensy tiny bit, just like 1 pixel. And when I press 3, it kind of added, I don't know if you can see it, but it just added a little bit of a lip there. It's just kind of going for that. We're just kind of going for like a little definition in that face region. Okay, so that's kind of how to do that character. If I want my horns to have a little bit of a connector point right here, let's switch to this view. I'm going to put my horns up here, so it'll be a little bit off from my drawing, but I just, maybe there. You can, if you want to, extrude right here and scale in, extrude again, scale in again, extrude again, scale in again. So I'm thinking of the lip for inside, for the, like the skin where a horn is going to have like a little bit of a fold up happen there. And so you could kind of use the extrude tool a few times to get that. And it looks very blocky right now, but if I press 3, you see how like some horns could kind of fit into there. So when I model this, the horns would be like separate objects right there. And that can be pretty helpful right there. And you could do the same thing for the legs. To keep this tutorial moving, I'm going to show you how to, one way to model cartoon teeth. And so I'm going to use Nurbs for that. And so Nurbs are like preview objects almost, is the way I think of it. You need, when you model using a Nurb, it can make life a little easier. And whenever I use Nurbs, I use it to kind of form the basic shape. And then it's really important that you convert it to polygons at some point. And so I basically just use Nurbs to like make the basic shape real quick, and then I convert it to polygons right away. So anyone who's done my wine glass tutorial before, which is in my intro class, is kind of familiar, at least a little bit, with Nurbs. And that's actually more advanced than what I'm going to do here. This is about as simple as it gets, what I'm about to show here with Nurbs. So to create a Nurb, or to create a tooth, and I'm going to have them be a little more rounded than in my drawing right there, because I just want to go for like a little bit friendly here, is I'm going to go to create Nurbs primitives, and you see, sort of like poly primitives, we have these options here, and I'm going to make a sphere, and I'll scale it up by just pressing the normal buttons, and I'll drag it out to the side so I'll be able to see this a little bit better from both views. And so I'm going to look at this from the front view here. So a NURB, it's a little bit like, a NURB reminds me a bit of Adobe Illustrator a little bit, where we're dealing with curves and vectors more than with actual polys or pixels. So I'm going to turn off symmetry real quick. And when you have a NURB, this looks like a normal polysphere, except for it's really, it appears to be a really low subdivision level, yet it's perfectly round. And if I right click on it, this breakout menu is the same. And so the main thing I use with NURBs is Control Vertex right here. So I right click, go to Control Vertex, and you get these purple dots right here, and they're like handles. And so I'm going to change this to the shape of a tooth by just dragging and selecting like this and grabbing these top two rows. Each row kind of corresponds to a vertical, or sorry, one of these horizontal lines of edges right there. So I grab these two rows right there by just doing a grab and select. And if I press W, kind of moves them up, but you see it kind of bends it nicely. And here I can press R and scale it in. And like pretty quickly, you can get like a pretty fun little cartoon tooth shape here. So I'm going to switch this to the side view. And you can select all of the control vertices at once and thin it out. You can also, these two top rows are really close to each other. Keep that in mind. So this one, you can also rotate it to get like a little bit of a bend like that. And just like that, I have a tooth shape. So we have a NURB here, and I'm going to just right click and go to Objects Mode to kind of see it normally again. And I think that looks okay for me here. I just might, real quick, these two top rows, I might just scale them back up a little bit more. I like this to be a little rounded. Okay, so right click, Object Mode. And I need to convert this NURB into a poly primitive object here. So it's a little hard to remember this menu, but it's easy to do if you can remember it, which is I selected an object mode, I go to modify. We're modifying the NURB to a polygon, so we're modify and then we're converting it. And then it's the top option up here. We're converting that NURB to a polygon, and then we need to do the options box because we need to change some options here. So I'm going to leave this up for a second. It's modify, convert, NURBs to polygons, and then the options box right there. And these are all pretty logical if you think about it, but it is a little hard to remember that. But there it is. And then here we have two sets of options we need to mess around with, or I guess three. Is we have the type. So this is the type of faces this is going to make. So you have triangles right here, or you have quads. We always want quads in this class, so really don't want triangles and definitely don't want five-sided faces. We want quads right there. And then there's four options, which is what's like the algorithm it uses to convert it. And I personally prefer count, which is right here, the top right one. And it's the simplest one. And it kind of does it with the least fuss and causes the least mess ups. I always do the count one personally. And the only control you get with the count one is like a slider right here, which is a preview of how many faces this thing's going to have when you convert it to polys. And remember, you can always smooth something to add more polys pretty easily, so there's a pretty good argument to be made to kind of generally steer towards a slightly lower number, but just depends on your taste there. And so when you're ready, I have mine around 300 here. I might just bring it down a little bit. All right, that's fine. And then I'll just press apply and close it out. And so you can see I have a poly model superimposed on top of my NURB model right there. And you can see they're both here in my outliner. And if I press the move tool, my anchor point's way over there. We can fix that pretty easily. But if I move my NURB, it also moves my poly object right there. So what you might want to do is either delete the NURB once you're done with it, or select both of them and then go to delete their history. So go edit, delete by type, history. And edit delete by type history is something that you'll want to do a lot in Maya, because while you're modeling something, particularly something complicated, Maya stores the modeling history within the model, and it just builds up and up and up over time, and it can cause some crazy glitches to happen. So deleting history, this is something that's very common in Maya. And what it's going to do now is it's going to detach the Nurb from the polygon model right there. So right there. And so now if I select the Nurb and I move it, they can move independently of one another. And the Nurb, I'm not going to delete it. I might like to save it for later, but what I am going to do is I'm just going to select it and then press H, and then it hides it. And when you hide something, you can always bring it back by looking in the outliner and then finding it in the outliner and then pressing H again. But that's the only way that you can bring it back. If I press H and hide it and then I just press H again, it doesn't, you see it says no valid objects. So I need to find it in the outliner, select it, and then press H to bring back its visibility. So, but I don't need that Nurb anymore. And so I got my poly tooth here, and the anchor point's way over there. So there's a few ways you can change the anchor point inside of the tooth. The easiest way is if you go to modify and then center pivot. So top window or top bar, modify, center pivot, bam, it just goes right in the middle of the object right there, nice and easy. So I'm going to go to the front view and I'm going to place the tooth in position. I'll obviously need to scale this way down. And you can continue to adjust this thing just by polymodeling, but just if you think about it, polymodeling this tooth might have been like a little bit harder if we did traditional polymodeling on it. So I'm going to need to rotate it. So E for rotate, or this button right here. I'll hold down J, and then it snaps by 15-degree increments. And I'm going to keep it straight for now. Press F if you need to frame up your object. An easy way to kind of find your object if you get lost like I just did. Oops. Just need to move it that way. This X-ray view is so helpful. And press F again to find it. I might need to rotate this a little bit like that. And got tooth 1. We need 2 teeth here. So instead of mirroring this one, I actually don't want this to be symmetrical. And so I'm just going to duplicate it. To duplicate an object like this, you can just go to Edit and then duplicate right there. Or you can see right there, Command D. And it duplicates it right on top of itself. So you don't see it at first. So it might look like nothing happened. And then you just press W and then move. And you see there's a copy that comes out of the woodwork there. And I need to rotate it this way to match that side. Might bring it in just a little bit just to get them just a little independent of one another. I am making a little monster here, so teeth shouldn't be too symmetrical. And yeah, there we go. So that's how you use Nurbs to make teeth. And continuing to move through this, let's look at the feet here. So I have some feet on my character that are, a little Sonic the Hedgehog, Mario-y kind of thing is what I'm going for there. And so I'm going to use polymodeling, and it's going to be semi-related in technique to what we did for the head area up there. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with a cube this time. Press cube. So this one right here, polycube. And I'm going to scale it up by pressing R. I always press the wrong button on that one first. And I'm going to position it in place. You can see my orthographic drawing isn't like perfectly flat. So we're just kind of using it as reference rather than like a tracing point here. But the idea here that I'm going to do is I'm just going to scale it. And the concept is that we're going to keep it really low in polys here at first. And we're kind of worrying about the what's the word for it? Just the main foot area at first. There's this high top area, which we're going to worry about in a moment. So we'll extrude that out, and we'll also extrude out the sole of the shoe. So we're just kind of worrying about the main area that my cursor is showing right there. So to start out, I'm going to go into the attribute editor, third tab, polycube right there. So select that box, attribute editor, third tab right here, polycube 2. Might be called polycube 1 for you. And I'm going to add one subdivision for the width. So we have one subdivision added, dividing in half that way, then one for the depth, or an additional one for the depth. So it'll be 2, 1, 2 right there. And that's all I really need. Again, the philosophy being low poly modeling, you know. So I'm going to right click and go to edge. I'm going to double click to select that edge loop right there and push it back a little bit. And so the general concept is these faces up here are going to be the front of the foot. These faces right here are going to be like the ankle area. And so when we extrude out the high top, it'll eventually be those faces right there. And then when we extrude out the soles of the shoe, it'll be these 4 down there. So that's kind of looking forward to the plan here. So keeping things low poly, I'm going to press 3, and I can see a preview. This is all, you know, doesn't look like much right now, but we have a nice rounded shape. I'll press 1, and let's start modeling here. And so a lot of this is the, you know, where we might be used to using the orthographic drawings to trace. In my case, I'm going to have to go by eye a little bit. So I'm moving edges. I'm going to be moving edges around, and I'm going to be concentrating on keeping things kind of rounded out. So I feel like the shoe, from the ankle to the front of the shoe here, there's a little bit of a dip down that'll happen there. And a trick I'll do to round things out a little bit is for the front, if we want to round it out this way, something I like to do is I like to press R to scale it. And with 1, 2 edges selected right there, if I scale them, they come together towards that center point right there. So they kind of round out. I did a little bit too much there. So that's a common trick I'll do to round things out. So I'll do that for the back as well. So 1, 2 edges, press R, and then scale them in a little bit. 1, 2 edge right here, and now I'm going to move them down a little bit to round it out that way. I might switch to vertex here. You know what? I'm going to leave. Let's see. I press edit undo a few times. Actually, I want to. I'm going to come back to that area in a minute. I'm going to go ahead and extrude the high top after I just do one more edge move right here. So I'm going to select that edge. Again, I'm just concentrating using my eye. You don't have to do this in the exact order I'm doing. I'm just trying to kind of get things a little bit rounded out and get them ready to extrude here. So before this gets too complicated, I'm going to select these 2 faces at the top, and I'm going to extrude out that high top. So modeling toolkit on the right, and then just press extrude. All we really need to worry about is just a blue arrow up right now. And I'm looking at my reference just a little bit. This shoe is looking a little big. So I might scale this whole thing down a little in objects mode. Still looking quite square, but remember, if you press 3, you get a preview of what this thing's going to look like. And keep in mind that the more edge loops that we add, the more defined the shape is going to be. So with very few faces, it's going to look blobby. And when you add faces, it'll get less blobby. So blobby being my technical term here. Let's say I'm going to right click and go to edge and just continue to round out the shape a little bit. And here, it might be time to start adding some edge loops. And so if I remember correctly from earlier in the week, I always have to just test this out to see, is insert edge loop tools might be a little funky here, so I might need to use the multi-cut tool to add edge loops, but we'll see. That is, yep, a little weird, right? So instead of using what I normally do, the Insert Edge Loop tool, I'm going to do the Multi-Cut tool, which is the same thing, it doesn't change the geometry. So just by clicking, the Multi-Cut tool manually adds vertices and lines here, but I'm going to hold down Control. I'm on a Mac right now. If you're on a PC, hold down Alt, and then just click. And you see it added an edge loop there, and it didn't change my geometry whatsoever. So I'm going to right click and go to Edge Mode, and hold down Shift, double click. And if I press R, I can scale it out uniformly, and you see it rounds it out a little bit all the way around, which is great. And selecting those 4 edges, pushing them forward. I'm just concentrating on just rounding this thing out as much as I can. It's my main concern here. Okay, so we have that rounded out. I'm going to select this edge and pull it forward, you know, continuing the theme of trying to round things out here. Right click, Objects Mode, press 3. And something I'm going to go ahead and do is there's like a little bit of like a collar thing going on with my character for the high top area. So to get that, I'm going to right click and go to face, hold down Shift and double click to get this loop of faces right there. You could also just kind of click and drag like this to get that loop. Make sure you keep rotating around the object. I'm going to extrude it to pull it out in each direction here and add some new topology. And so I believe the blue arrow is going to be what I want here. So I just press extrude and then blue arrow, and it kind of pulls it out nice and uniform. I might do the green box to scale it in a little bit, and that mostly looks kind of okay. So I'll press Q and right click, go to Object Mode, press 3. So you can see that that collar is starting to kind of take form a little bit. We still got a lot of work to do on this, but it's coming together here. That 3 button, the 1 and 3 button, is just really paramount for getting this thing to work the way you want. And something I might do here is I might just go to Edit, Delete by Type History. Just clear that out. I'm going to try the Insert Edge Loop tool again to add an edge loop here, going vertically around the ankle. Let's see if that works for me or not. That did seem to behave like a little bit better, but I think the multi-cut tool is what I'm going to want here. So multi-cut tool down here, hold Control right there, adds an edge loop. Make sure you press Q after doing the multi-cut tool, just like when you're doing the extrude tool. And here, you need to select that edge, right? We're rounding things out. So select that edge, it's too square in there. So I'm just going to round it out a little bit. I need to, oops, right click and go to Vertex just to continue to round out that as well. I'm just going around, so I added that edge loop, so I'm just looking at that edge loop and looking for areas where I need to kind of round it out some more and get it to be less boxy here. So that's good on the inner side. We're going to go to the outside of the shoe here. Make it less boxy there. I'll select, I'm going to do vertices instead of edges this time, 1, 2, 3. And then I'm going to pull these out to round that out a little bit more. Okay. So that's rounded out there. When we add the sole, it's going to make a lot of progress really quickly on this, by the way. So that's going to be nice. This is going to look a lot less like a booty in a second here. Let's see here. So I'm going to add, you know what, let's go ahead and work on that sole here. So I'll right click, go to face, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You can tell instantly that some back faces got selected there. So hold Control, drag and to deselect right there. And so we're going to extrude a few times, and then we're going to bevel here in a moment. So that's kind of what's coming up with this. So I'm going to extrude once, and let's see here. Actually, I think I'm just going to extrude one time, and then I'm going to use the bevel tool, and that'll take care of it. So I just selected those faces, extruded, just did the blue arrow, brought it down, and we have our sole right there. And now we're going to use we're going to shift and select those faces now. So I just did that by just selecting a face, holding down shift, double click, and then getting that whole edge loop going all the way around. And I'm going to extrude again. And usually the blue arrow is what gets things pulled out and universally in the correct direction right there. Looking for something relatively subtle right there. And that looks mostly okay to me. I'll press Q. So next up, if we press 3, you can see it's starting to kind of shape up, but we still got more work to do here. Remember, more edges we add, the more defined this thing's going to be. So this thing's still a little blobby for my taste. I want this thing to be more defined. So I'll press 1. And the best way to do that is to add geometry. And so I am going to bevel this. So, and I'm just going to keep those faces selected. And when you bevel faces, it creates a bevel on the top side and a bevel on the bottom side of the face. If you bevel an edge, it'll only create one bevel. So selecting a loop of faces and then beveling kind of does 2 bevels at once. And so I press bevel right there, which is right next to extrude. And you get a similar menu as extrude. And it's this right here. So fraction is the size of the bevel. So I'm going to type in, you can type it in or you can click on where it says fraction and drag left to right. I'd typically like to just type it in though. But oh, there we go. 0.1's okay for me. And segments is the amount of subdivisions within there. So I'm fine with 1 on this. But if I were to just drag on segments, you see how it adds segments in there. And again, I'm just dragging where it says segments and dragging left to right to add more. Or I'll press edit undo. You can just click right here and just type in the number you want. Depth is the last control. I'll go over here for beveling. And I'm not going to mess with it, but its depth is only measured at a value of -1 to 0 to 1. And so if you type in 20, it'll just mean 1 here. And if you type in -20, it'll just mean -1 there. And so 1 is the standard bevel, and it's kind of what you'd think of as a bevel, where it's kind of, if you look at my cursor, hopefully my cursor is showing up in this screen capture, is that it rounds out kind of normally vertically that way. And then if you have depth at 0, it'll be like a hard line right there. And then if you type in -1, it'll be like an inverted bevel. So yeah, try that out if you're unfamiliar with it. So I'll press Q and right click, Object Mode. And now when I press 3, we'll still need to add another bevel here in a sec. But you can see that that sole is starting to get a little defined right there, which is nice. So I'll press 1 again. And we're going to make one more bevel. So for one bevel, remember, we just do an edge loop. So it's this edge loop. That's where the sole connects with the body of the shoe. So hold down shift, double click, get that going. Now I'm going to do another bevel exactly the same. Press bevel, where the fraction, the only thing I change is the fraction. I'll change that to 0.1. And then press Q. There we go. And hopefully this thing's going to start looking like a shoe. So there's still some more work to do, but you see this thing's kind of coming together. The front of the shoe is a little too thin compared to the heel. So to do that, I'm going to add another edge loop here. You know, we have a pretty big gap in faces right there. So let's do multi-cut tool, hold down Control or Alt on your keyboard. So I added an edge loop there, and so we have some adjustments I need to make to it. First thing, that just kind of rubs me the wrong way. That's going like that. I need to round this thing out on the top too, but I'm going to round it out on the sides first, which is just going to be, I'm just going to select both of those vertices right there, and then I'll use the scale tool just to push them both out in the same direction there. And you see how my shoe's too flat on the top right there, so I need to round this out. So I might, you can do vertices or edges here. I'll just do vertices since that's the mode I'm already in. I'll select those 4 vertices right there and press W. Just press that down a little bit. You see how that's kind of rounding out into a little bit more of a shoe shape right there. And let's look at this again. Coming together. Still need to make it wider though, so it's the best way to do that. I'll right click and go to face mode, select all those faces on the front there. I'm going to widen this thing out just by grabbing all of it at once right there. And I'm just doing a normal scale tool right there to scale them out. And notice that I'm not scaling it vertically because I want that shoe to remain flat, at least for my character here. And press Q, object mode 3. All right, so that shoe's starting to look a little bit more like the way I was hoping it would. We could also add a bevel on this collar up here for the high top. And I think it would be wise as well to add an extrusion in here so that the shoe goes inside. You see the leg needs to go in there, so it needs to kind of go inward a little bit. So I'm going to select those 4 faces, make sure no strays get selected by using the control key and clicking on them. I'll press extrude, and I'm going to move it down with the blue arrow. Then I'll press R to get out of extrude because I'll want to scale it uniformly, and just switching over from the extrude tool to the scale tool is the easiest way to do that most of the time. And that's going to be okay. And let's double check this by looking at it there. So I want to add some bevels up here because I want to add more of a lip at the top. So what I'm going to do is right click, go to face, hold shift and double click to get that face loop up there. I'm going to bevel again, and again it's going to make a bevel on each side of the faces there. So I'll bevel on each side, and the advantage of doing this is that it helps kind of make that lip more defined there. The more geometry you have, the more defined it's going to be and the less blobby it's going to be. So I'll press 3. You can see that lip is starting to kind of form out a little bit there. I might like that lip to be a bit like thicker, so I'm just gonna what's the best way to do this? I'll hold shift. Oops. So I'm shift double clicking, shift double clicking. Shoot. It's very picky. Let's see here. Just trying to find an easy way to make that selection here. Sometimes you just got to do it the hard way here. Also, I guess I could switch to the side view and then just select the top up here and then hold control and deselect there. I'm just trying to select all the faces on the top right there. So sometimes you just have to think a little differently to kind of make the selection that you want there. And now I'll press control, and I'll just have to manually deselect these. 1, 2. Okay, and I'm just going to scale it in universally, and you see how that's going to thicken that kind of collar area right there. So press Q. Let's see, hopefully this is a little wonky compared to what I was thinking of. I didn't quite think about that correctly, but I'm okay with that. Let's see. So yeah, so that's the basic process for a shoe. I would kind of keep working on that, but I think you have the idea, and you just kind of continue to fine tune this. What you might want to do as well is, you see in my drawings that his feet are facing outwards. They're not facing 90 degrees straight forward. You want this to be a little lively and organic here, so you can kind of angle it out that way. And eventually, you know, I can just, to get the other shoe right here, you can just mirror it. Bam, got that right there. So continuing to move here, the legs, really simple on my character. If you look at my drawing right here, the body has fur on it, but the legs are going to be kind of more of like a sock material. So I'm going to have them be their own objects right here, and I'm going to keep it incredibly simple, and I'm just going to make a tube. So poly cylinder right there. You could also go to create polygon primitives and then do a disk and then extrude that up. I'm just trying to think. but I think the cylinder's fine. So I'm just gonna scale it up, scale it vertically to give it a little length. I'm gonna move this up out of the way a little bit, and this is going to intersect with both the body and the shoe, and so I really don't need these faces up here on the top and the bottom. So I'm just going to go into the side view right here, and I might move this object so that it's just a little, not going to interact too much with the others. And I'm going to use the same trick I was using a second ago to select the top and the bottom faces. So I'm going to drag and select all the faces, then I'm going to hold Control to deselect and select in the middle, and you can kind of see there that I have the top and the bottom faces selected there. I'm just going to delete them, get them out of the way. That'll make things easier when it comes time to UV and all that stuff, just less polygons to deal with. Objects mode, and I'm going to position this using the orthographic views to help me out. I'm just going to position them basically in a basic way at first. Right there. You can see my drawing that these are not just like perfectly straight up cylinders here. They're thicker at the top and thinner at the bottom. So something I'm going to do, and this is, I need to do a step to make this a little easier on myself. So I'm going to use display layers for a moment and use that to my advantage. So I have my reference image on a display layer, and display layers work like Photoshop layers. And again, I've talked about this before, but it's right here under Channel Box and Layer Editor, right here. And you can turn on and off the visibility of an object, and you can also lock an object and turn it into a wireframe. There's a few things you can do that just is really helpful for when you're modeling and you're starting to get towards complex things with juggling a lot of objects. Just making life a lot easier here. Also, speaking of which, I need to name some of this stuff. I need to lead by example here and not reinforce bad habits. And so definitely name your objects. It only takes a second, and it makes just things so much easier down the road. Right, it took me 2 seconds. So I'm gonna put the way that you add objects onto display layers is you just select the object, go to layers, create layer from selected, so the second one down right there, and then I'll click, and now I can turn on and off the visibility of the feet. I might double click right there and rename it, and press save. Oh, whoops. You might have to say feet layer right there. And so you have visibility on and off. And then on the right here, you have T, which turns it into a wireframe, which is actually really helpful for what we're about to do, where we just want to have it for reference. You know what I mean? Be able to see where the feet are, but not, you know, I'll want to be able to see the leg better. But then finally, if I press R, it turns it into a reference layer, and it basically locks it. So I'm clicking right now, and it can't select it. So R turns it into a locked layer, and then if I press again, it turns it back normal again. So I did that for the feet, and I'm going to do that for the body and the teeth as well. So I'm just going to select them both, layers, create layer from selected, double click, body layer, oops. Notice I put an underspace there instead of a space. And then I'm going to add one more for the eyes. Double click. And so just a good way to kind of pull things out of your way here. I'm going to worry about the legs, and so I kind of want to see the body, but I just want to I want the leg to be shaded, but I want everything else to be wireframe right there. Oops. My hand keeps slipping there. Okay. So you see what I did there? I changed the body layer to T, feet layer to T. I can see them as a wireframe a little bit, but now I'm going to work on the leg for a second. So I'm going to right click, go to vertex, I'm going to select that top row, and I'm going to scale them out because I want the top of the leg to be thicker than the bottom of the leg. And I might switch to 2 view here so I can see this from perspective and from the front view. And I might just add at least one edge loop, and I'll try to use the normal insert edge loop tool here to round it out some. Actually didn't make a big difference. And I'm going to use that edge loop to select the edge and then just rotate a little bit. And then I just want to add like a little bit of like a, like a bow to the leg there. And you know what, I also need to bring that forward some. So thinking about the from the side view. If you look at any human character from the side, their legs are going to have like at least a little bit of a bow like that. It's a little more complicated on a photorealistic person, right? But the general concept is kind of what I mean there. And then when I don't need much, when I press 3, I'll get an idea of what this thing will look like when it's previewed smooth. So 1, 3, and these are simple shapes I'm going for here, so I'm not going to really take it too much further than that. So I'm just going to click on this again to get those out of reference. And you can see here, now that I'm out of wireframe mode, that I needed to pull that up just a little bit further. I was kind of looking too much at my drawing. And then I need to right click, objects mode, and just kind of using my kind of going back to trusting my perspective view a little bit more, just kind of lining this up right there. So we got a leg right there, and I'm going to save. And I could go ahead and mirror this thing, so I have that leg right there, and I'll just press, where is it? Mirror right there, this button right here, and I'll just mirror it over. And this thing is starting to come together here. So next up, in this very long lesson I'm giving here, is we have the tongue, and so that is the sweep mesh tool right there. And so for the sweep mesh tool, I would recommend just kind of looking back to previous tutorials. I'm actually looking down at the runtime at this thing, and this is getting too long. So for the tongue, reference back to my sweep mesh tutorial video, so you can find that on YouTube, and it's under my intro class playlist. And in my drawing I have like a short tongue right there in the front view, but if you look at my real character drawing, I have it kind of coming out in like a ridiculous way right there. And so the sweep mesh tool can be a really helpful tool to build that out, and it's a really fun, simple tool to use. And so just reference that tutorial for that one. So yep, hopefully this tutorial was helpful. I'm gonna save my work here, and next up I'm gonna kind of build up my horns and my tongue maybe off screen, but the next steps after this point is I'm gonna take this into Mudbox and just do like minor adjustments to this thing to just get it sculpted and shaped exactly the way I like here. And there's going to be minor tweaks for this, and it'll be a good opportunity to introduce Mudbox to anyone who hasn't used it before, because it's a really nice program that's going to open up a lot of doors for you here. So that's what we'll do next time, and then we'll go into UVing, and then we'll start getting into fur after that point.